So I was making the last video, and but the grid system, which I just did very roughly, by the way. We can talk more and more about the intricacies as you move along, but I realized that I was using some vocabulary that I assumed you knew. So let me just fix that. We're going to talk about the anatomy of a website. Let's look at CNN. Most websites fall into some basic big categories, and then they usually have what's known as a header up here, and that's usually the logo and the uppermost nav and the main nav. Down below is the main content area. Here's the main content area, and then usually there are sidebars. The sidebars fall to the side. Depending on the website, it might have two sidebars, it might have one. Then here's some subsidiary content, which may or may not be considered part of the footer, but you'll see that the footer is also, they fall into very, easily identifiable patterns. Like they have what's called a redundant navigation, where they restate everything that's possible on the top, or they highlight things that you might not need everywhere else, like terms of service, privacy guidelines, so on and so forth. And this actually applies even to the fancier news sites. One thing I will point out, CNN, not responsive, at least not this version. So they're a little behind the times in my mind. Now let's look at this site. This is Hello Money. It's actually from Circle, excuse me. And it's fully responsive. Woo! Very pretty. Very pretty. Anyway, this, of course, is the header. This uppermost level with the logo, main nav. And you could say, I'm going to include Hello Money and the call to action, the COA, the call to action, as a part of the header. And then I can scroll down and look at this loveliness. There's the main content. This the uppermost nav stays in place. It's ubiquitous. It's locked. And as you scroll down, this is still part of the main content. But you can, and it doesn't have any sidebars because it's so simple. It's very nicely done. And finally, the footer. So once again, header, main content, sidebar, footer. These can happen in many, many different ways. If you look at Site Inspire, which is a great site, you got to really check this out. I've put this link up a few times, or maybe once. I'll make sure it's up a couple more times. Let's look at this one. This one, once again, it's a very beautifully worked out site. But look, once again, there's your header, your uppermost nav. That's their branding. Wow, it's so minimal. Here is the main nav, or the secondary nav, actually. Let's just take a look at that. This breaks things out. The main body of the site is still there, and it still has a footer. So there's a lot of possibilities, even with these they're not fixed, but very, very kind of a stable set of terms: header, sidebar, footer, and main content area. Now we'll talk a little bit, if you were to go into coding, you would note that HTML5, the language on which the internet is based or built, actually uses these terms like these to break out content, like section and they've abandoned some more general terms for precise terms like header, footer, and nav. So it's actually starting to become a worldwide language. But I just wanted to cover that. Once again, header, footer, sidebar, and nav.